What if the reason people keep disrespecting you is because you've unknowingly taught them that it's okay? What if your silence, your tolerance, your calm face in moments of discomfort weren't signs of peace, but quiet permissions? You don't have to shout to be heard, but you do have to mean what you show and show what you mean. People will treat you the way you allow them to. This isn't a harsh judgment. It's simply how human nature works. You can't demand the world to be better, kinder, or more respectful. But you can take complete responsibility for the one thing always in your power: your response. And if you find yourself in situations where disrespect seems to repeat itself, ask this not to shame yourself, but to understand: have I allowed this? Not with my words, but with my silence? Your endurance is noble. But endurance without boundaries often becomes quiet approval. The Stoics didn't try to control others. They practiced control of self. And that began with clarity, knowing when something is wrong, not just externally, but within you. So when you stay quiet while being disrespected, you aren't protecting peace, you're planting permission. When you smile through insults, minimize harsh treatment, or keep harmony at the cost of your dignity, you're not being virtuous, you're slowly erasing your own standard. People don't respond to what you say, they respond to what you consistently show. And if what you show is indifference to your own worth, they'll believe you're okay with being reduced. You may not be deep down, but people can't see your intentions. They only see your choices. You might say you value respect, but if you keep returning to places where your voice is silenced, where your presence is overlooked, or your worth is dismissed, your words become empty, even to yourself. True respect isn't something you demand, it's something you inspire. And that inspiration begins with how you carry your own self-respect. Disrespect rarely erupts in one dramatic moment. It creeps in. A sarcastic joke at your expense, a dismissive glance, a recurring silence where there should be care. And every time you let it slide, you send a message. This is acceptable, but it's not. Stoicism doesn't call you to confront everyone. It calls you to see clearly, to know what you can control, and that always begins with you. You don't need to shout back. You don't need to lecture or justify. You simply need to act. When someone speaks down to you, don't match their tone. Don't even stay in the space. When manipulation arises, don't meet it with rage. Just create distance. When the pattern repeats, you don't need to fight. You withdraw your consent. You don't need to force others to treat you differently. You teach them through quiet, firm example. You become immune to chaos the moment you stop feeding it. Raise your standards, not as punishment, but as a promise to yourself. Draw your line not to hurt others, but to guard your peace. And do it quietly, without making announcements, without waiting for agreement. The Stoic doesn't rely on domination. Their power is born in discipline. Not in forcing others to change, but in mastering their own boundaries. Your lines don't need to come with loud declarations. Let them be silent oaths. Let your life carry the message. And in time, the world around you will shift because it realizes you are no longer available for anything less than respect. When you first begin to live like this, don't be surprised when people resist. They might ask what changed. They may feel unsettled, even offended. That's normal. Because when you stop playing the role they assign to you, discomfort will arise. But that discomfort, it's not your burden. It's theirs to hold. Your job is not to be agreeable to everyone. Your only task is to be anchored in your values and steady in your peace. If someone can't exist in your life without violating your integrity, then they were never meant to be part of it. Many people fear that setting firm boundaries will push others away. But pause and ask yourself, how long will you keep betraying your own soul just to keep others comfortable? How many more hours will you spend in the company of those who ignore your worth? A Stoic doesn't seek to be liked by all. They seek to live aligned with their conscience. And the ones who stay are the ones who respect that clarity, that strength, that quiet discipline. Respect isn't something you request. It's something you model. You teach the world how to treat you through what you tolerate, what you speak up for, and what you quietly walk away from. Human nature tests boundaries. That's not evil, it's just real. But once others see that your standards don't bend, that they're not negotiable, they'll either rise to meet them or naturally drift away. And either outcome is fine. A boundary is not a wall. It's not cold or closed off. It's a shape. It frames your life. Just like the frame of a painting doesn't limit the art, it defines it. You are the one responsible for choosing who enters your space and on what terms. Imagine your time, your mind, your energy as a sacred home. Would you leave your front door wide open, hoping every visitor brings kindness? Of course not. But in daily life, many people leave their emotional doors open, silently wishing others will guess their limits. The world doesn't work on hopes. It responds to clarity. Boundaries must be clear not once, but always. That's where your strength grows. Not in dramatic defenses, but in quiet repetition. Many misunderstand boundaries as hostility. They think saying no is rude or walking away is selfish. But the truth is, it's self-respect. When you say this doesn't work for me, you're not punishing anyone. You're simply choosing not to participate in something that harms your inner peace. Let this be clear. The ones who gain from your silence will often be the first to resent your voice. They'll say you've changed, and you have. You've become clearer, steadier, more aligned with the truth of who you are. They might say you're too sensitive, but a Stoic isn't sensitive to insults. They're sensitive to the erosion of virtue. Let others feel shaken by your growth. That's not your burden. That's their process. Now imagine what it looks like to set boundaries from a place of reason, not reactivity. They're not grand gestures. They're small, steady choices. Like not replying to messages after a certain hour. Like choosing to skip events that drain your spirit. Or walking away when someone crosses an emotional line. Each time you honor your boundary, you affirm your worth not with noise, but with calm conviction. And this doesn't require aggression. The Stoic doesn't explode, they remain composed. You can simply say, this doesn't work for me, or I'm not available for this right now. No explanation needed. Your life is yours to live, not theirs to approve. The moment you begin choosing your principles over your fears, something powerful happens. You stop being shaken. You stop explaining yourself. And you begin showing the world, this is who I am. And once you begin living by those boundaries, firm, quiet, unwavering, something begins to shift. The noise that used to drain you starts to fade. The chaos that once felt unavoidable, it begins to lose its grip. You start to notice a stillness, not just within you, but slowly reflected in the world around you. A boundary, after all, is a full sentence. It doesn't require extra words, grand explanations, or emotional justifications. It speaks for itself. The Stoic understands this deeply: virtue, clarity, peace. None of these require approval from others. You don't speak your truth to win an argument. You speak it to stay aligned with your inner compass. And here's the part many don't realize. The hardest part of boundaries isn't setting them. It's standing firm when others react. Because they will react. People might question you, push back, or try to make you feel guilty for drawing the line. But that's their reaction. And it's not yours to carry. Your responsibility isn't to manage everyone's comfort. It's to protect your own peace. The Stoics remind us again and again. Tranquility doesn't come from pleasing others. It comes from living in accordance with principle. Real respect cannot be built on guilt, fear, or obligation. It's only real when it's built on shared values and mutual understanding. And those who truly respect you, they'll adjust. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not immediately, but they'll listen, they'll reflect, they'll try. Those who don't, let them fall away. You're not here to belong everywhere. You're here to live anchored in who you truly are. And when that anchor becomes steady, when your life becomes guided by your own code, everything changes. You stop waiting for permission. You stop chasing validation. You stop exhausting yourself explaining your needs to people who have no intention of listening. Instead, you walk with quiet conviction. You stop bending just to keep the peace. You stop apologizing for your standards. And you start standing calm, clear, complete. People will notice. They'll either respect the new boundary or remove themselves. Either way, you win, because peace finally finds room to breathe. Not because they changed, but because you did. You stopped trading your dignity for approval. You stopped managing everyone else's emotions. You stopped shrinking to fit into places that were never meant for someone as whole as you're becoming. You gave yourself what you once begged for from the world, and the world, as it always does, began to mirror your example. That's the Stoic way. You don't just talk about self-respect, you become it. You don't just quote strength, you live it. You lead yourself. You walk with discipline. You embody the same standards you expect. And confidence? That doesn't just arrive, it's built. Not in the absence of fear, but right in the middle of it. Courage is not about being fearless, it's about acting anyway. With trembling hands, with a dry throat, with doubt whispering in your ear. And yet, you still show up. You speak. You set the line. You hold it. And when the storm passes, you realize you didn't break. That's how confidence grows, not from praise or attention, but from exposure to hard moments, followed by the quiet realization. I stayed. I stood. I didn't yield. Confidence isn't loud. It doesn't scream or seek applause. It's quiet. It's steady. It's built in the small moments when no one's watching. When you keep your word, when you care for your body, your mind, when you honor your time and your energy, that's when your trust in yourself deepens. That's when confidence stops being a performance and starts being your foundation. But here's the truth. You can't feel good about yourself if you keep abandoning yourself. If you silence your thoughts. If you betray your values. If you tolerate treatment that chips away at your dignity. Confidence doesn't grow in soil poisoned by self-betrayal. That's not confidence. That's survival. And survival, over time, it drains you. The transformation begins when you reclaim your worth, not as something others give you, but something already waiting inside you. The moment you stop chasing approval, the moment you stop fearing the disappointment of others, you unlock something sacred. You realize someone else's discomfort doesn't mean you did something wrong. It means you did something different. Growth is never comfortable. And real confidence, it's forged in those exact moments when you choose truth over ease, when you act instead of hesitate, when you pick principle over popularity. You don't need all the answers. You just need to step forward anyway, to trust you'll learn, that you'll grow, that even if you fall, you'll rise. Even if it's imperfect, you'll improve. That's how Stoics train the mind not to avoid fear, but to face it, not to worship comfort, but to pursue strength. And that strength doesn't appear while you're waiting on the sidelines. It shows up in real action, in the honest no, in the hard conversation, in the choice to hold your line. Confidence is the reward of discipline, the quiet proof that you led yourself, that you didn't fold, that your values stayed intact. And people, have they noticed that? The world respects those who respect themselves. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, every time you respond with clarity instead of reacting emotionally, you place another stone in the foundation of your self-belief. And from that foundation, something powerful grows. Confidence. Not the kind that boasts, but the kind that radiates. It's quiet, unshakable, and rare. Few talk about this, but real confidence is contagious. It doesn't need to declare itself. It isn't arrogance. It isn't performance. It's presence. When you walk into a room as someone who knows their worth, not because someone said it, but because you've proven it to yourself, people feel it. They see it in your posture, in your restraint, in your clarity. They respect it not because you asked, but because you no longer needed to. Confidence isn't about being better than others. It's about being deeply aligned with your truth without apology, without explanation. It's not built in grand moments. It's built choice by choice. Quiet, intentional, consistent. So stop waiting for readiness. The Stoics said, "Don't wonder whether you are prepared. Act, and through action become prepared." Confidence doesn't come before courage. It follows it. You don't feel ready and then step forward. You step forward, and in that motion, you build readiness. You speak even if your voice shakes. You show up not to be noticed, but because you know you matter. This isn't magic, it's practice. Confidence is a muscle, and like any muscle, it strengthens with use. But just as confidence builds in quiet steps, so does disrespect. Often, it doesn't arrive with yelling or insults. It arrives softly through tone, through delay, through subtle dismissals. And sometimes you'll wonder, did that really matter? The answer is yes. Because the true power lies not in how fast you respond, but in whether you pause. The pause is one of the Stoics' greatest tools. That space between what happens and what you choose to do. In that space, there's freedom. The freedom to stay sovereign, to remain in control of your own energy. Your first instinct when disrespected might be emotional anger, embarrassment, defensiveness. But emotion is a wave. And the wise, they don't jump into waves. They observe, they wait, they pause. That pause, it's not weakness, it's strength, held back. It's leadership. It's self-mastery. That pause we spoke of earlier, it's not just a moment of silence. It's your moment of mastery. Because when you remember that emotions are not your master, but your tools, everything begins to shift. Just pause and remind yourself, I don't serve my emotions, they serve me. And when you stop reacting to every provocation, something powerful happens. You reclaim your energy. You stop allowing others to dictate your mood, your reactions, your sense of self. Picture this. You're interrupted in a meeting. Instinctively, your chest tightens, your breath shortens, your body prepares for defense. But then there's a pause. You don't lash out. You look up and calmly say, "I wasn't finished." That's it. No yelling, no over-explaining. And yet you've just taught the room something important. Your voice is measured, not impulsive. Your boundary is clear, not aggressive. Your presence doesn't rely on volume. It's built on clarity. This kind of self-possession isn't random, it's trained. Because in a world where urgency shouts louder than wisdom, we're constantly pressured to react. Messages, notifications, demands, noise. It's easy to believe that speed equals strength. But the Stoic knows urgency is not the same as importance. Just because something screams for your attention doesn't mean it deserves it. And the more you practice the pause, the more intentional your life becomes. You stop living on autopilot, tossed around by tone, by urgency, by manipulation. You begin to choose carefully. In conflict, you pause. In criticism, you pause. In moments of passive aggression, you pause. That quiet space, it's not hesitation, it's power. It gives you the chance to ask, who do I want to be in this moment? What version of myself do I choose? And make no mistake, this isn't fake. It's not performance. It's principle. Because most of the disrespect you encounter doesn't come from hate, it comes from insecurity. When you pause, you don't absorb their chaos. You let it pass. And in doing so, you model something powerful. You are not easily shaken. You're not here to compete for space, attention, or validation. You don't raise your voice. You raise your standard. And in that quiet, your steadiness becomes your signature. It whispers to the world, I know who I am. That pause does more than prevent regret. It reconnects you to your values, to your reason, to your calm. And sometimes let this land the strongest response to disrespect is no response at all. Not because you're avoiding, but because you're focused. Not because you're afraid, but because your energy is too valuable to waste on immaturity. So make the pause your practice. Not a tactic, but a way of living. Breathe, reflect, then act not from fear, but from clarity. That's what it means to lead yourself. Life will continue to test your peace, your patience, your limits. That's beyond your control. But how you meet each test calmly, consciously, consistently, that's always your choice. And every time you pause, you prove something. Your self-respect is not negotiable. That's not just strength, it's growth. That's how you begin to live as someone who commands respect without ever raising your voice. The Stoics knew this long ago. You may not control how others treat you, but you do control how you teach them to treat you. And part of that teaching, it's in your words. Your language, both aloud and within your own mind, reveals your beliefs. It reflects your self-respect. It shows whether your actions are aligned with your values. So ask yourself, what tone does your inner voice carry? If you speak with hesitation, if you constantly minimize your worth, if every sentence you utter is wrapped in doubt, others will follow that script. Because what you tolerate in your internal dialogue becomes permission in your external world. If you don't honor your own voice, why should they? It's time to stop making yourself small just to keep others comfortable. Stop starting sentences with, I'm just sorry, but this might sound dumb. These aren't signs of humility, they're signals. Each one says, don't take me seriously. And guess what? They won't. The Stoic speaks clearly not to impress, but to align their words with their values. Language isn't just noise, it's direction. It sets the tone before the message even lands. If you speak with doubt, you'll be treated with doubt. But when you speak with calm conviction, even with a shaky voice, you show belief. And belief is powerful. Belief is contagious. Think of those people who carry presence. They're not always the loudest, they're rarely the flashiest. What they carry is clarity. They speak like their words matter, because to them, they do. And that's where your shift must begin. Your words have to matter to you first. So start listening, not just to how you speak to others, but how you speak to yourself. When someone compliments you, do you dismiss it? Do you say, "Oh, it was nothing," or "I just got lucky"? That might sound modest, but it quietly tells your mind, you didn't earn this. Instead, just say, "Thank you. I worked hard." That's not arrogance. That's alignment. And when someone asks for your opinion, do you start with, "This might be wrong, but..." If so, you're teaching others to disregard what comes next. Flip it. Say, "Here's what I've noticed. Here's what I see." Stand in your perspective. Speak with clarity, not apology. But this doesn't stop with external conversations. It goes deeper. The words you whisper to yourself day after day build the lens through which you see your entire life. If that voice constantly tells you you're not enough, you always fail, everyone else is ahead of you, then your life will begin to mirror that. Why? Because those thoughts become the soil where your actions take root. So change the soil, change the voice. Replace "I can't" with "I'm learning." Replace "I'm not good at this" with "I improve every time I try." Replace "they're ahead of me" with "their path is different and I'm still moving forward." These aren't cheesy affirmations. They're discipline, mental discipline, and that above all is the Stoic's greatest tool. And don't forget, silence speaks too. When you stay silent in moments that ask for your truth, when boundaries are crossed, when values are violated, when disrespect knocks at your door, your silence doesn't preserve peace. It permits harm. To remain quiet when your truth is needed is to tell the world your voice holds no weight. But it does. You don't need perfect words, just honest ones. When you speak with intention and grace, you lead yourself. You model respect, not as something you demand, but as something you quietly embody. And others will follow your example. They'll notice how you speak calm, direct, unapologetic. They'll see you as someone who isn't easily dismissed, someone who doesn't speak just to fill silence, but to bring clarity. That presence, that tone, that conviction makes people lean in. They may not always agree, but they'll listen because you've shown them you know your worth. So when your words begin to reflect your worth, calm, clear, unwavering, the world pays attention. Not because you demanded it, but because your very posture whispered, "I know who I am." And when you begin to speak like someone who truly respects themselves, people don't listen out of fear, they listen out of respect. But it always starts with you. You must be the first to speak to yourself the way you want the world to speak to you. The Stoics taught, no one can harm your dignity unless you first abandon it. Let that sink in. So let your words, both the ones you say out loud and the ones that echo in your thoughts, be a reflection of that dignity. Speak with clarity, speak with restraint, speak with purpose. Because when you've already defined your standard, disrespect has nothing to grip onto. Why? Because the world follows the example you set. And that includes the people you surround yourself with. Who you allow into your life isn't just a casual choice, it's a philosophical one. Your environment doesn't just influence your day, it shapes your mind, your habits, your attitude, and ultimately, your character. Even the strongest person, if immersed in a toxic circle long enough, will begin to question their value not because they're weak, but because repetition reshapes perception. So be vigilant, be deliberate. As Epictetus said, the key is to keep company only with those who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. There's no such thing as neutral influence. Every conversation you have, every silence you endure, every glance exchanged, each one plants something in you, either belief or doubt. There are people who feed your reason, who appreciate your presence, who align with your values. And then there are others, whether they mean to or not, who pull you away from yourself. The ones who minimize your words, who step over your boundaries, who mock your growth. And these people, they are not harmless. Their energy, over time, distorts your perception of who you are. Quietly, subtly, they convince you to settle, to expect less, to ask for less, to become less. That's not friendship. That's erosion. So audit your circle like your character depends on it, because it does. And if you leave a room consistently feeling smaller, more confused, less certain, don't ignore that signal. That discomfort is data. It doesn't mean those people are bad. It might simply mean they're no longer aligned with your path. Growth often creates space, but that space isn't a punishment. It's clarity. You don't need to burn bridges or create drama. Stoicism doesn't teach rage, it teaches reason. It teaches boundaries, not bitterness. But you do have to be intentional. Stop giving your time to those who drain it. Stop offering your energy to those who only take. Stop confusing loyalty with alignment. Just because someone was part of your story yesterday doesn't mean they belong in your story tomorrow. Something powerful happens when you raise the standard of your surroundings. Your identity rises to meet it. When you're surrounded by people who are kind, clear, disciplined, and focused, you no longer need to force respect. It becomes the natural atmosphere. You absorb it, you echo it, you become it. You grow calm, steady, certain, not because you raise your voice louder, but because you don't need to raise it at all. Seek out those who challenge you with wisdom, not ego. The ones who hold you accountable but never tear you down. The ones who see your potential even when it's not yet polished. These people do more than support you. They mirror the higher version of you back to yourself. And sometimes you don't meet them until you make room by gently letting go of those who no longer walk your way. Letting go isn't cruelty, it's courage. What's truly cruel is staying in relationships that chip away at your spirit. You deserve to be in rooms where you don't have to shrink, around people who speak your name with integrity even when you're not there to hear it. You deserve peace. And peace begins with protection. Once you decide that your energy matters, once you draw the line and stand behind it, something shifts. The landscape of your life changes. Your standards rise, your clarity sharpens, your confidence grows. And disrespect? It no longer finds shelter in your world, not because it ceased to exist, but because it no longer fits. What doesn't match your mindset, your discipline, your peace simply fades away. So choose your company as though your future depends on it, because it does. Your potential isn't a gift others hand to you, it's a duty you uphold. And you must guard it. From those who don't see it, from those who don't honor it, from those who don't support it. You're not too much. You've just been surrounded for too long by people who expected too little. Align yourself with those who remind you of your strength, not those who make you forget it. That one shift made with quiet clarity will dissolve more disrespect than any confrontation ever could. Because when you start living from that place of alignment, you don't have to demand respect. You become it. Respect isn't something you chase, it's something you emanate. It flows from you. It becomes your atmosphere, calm, steady, unmistakable. Not because you declare it, but because your life reflects it. The Stoics taught us our outer world mirrors the standards we hold within. So set your standards with care. Standards aren't rules to control others. They're the quiet boundaries you live by, the ones that govern how you speak, how you act, how you let others treat you. Not out of control, but out of intention. When you walk into a room with strong internal standards, the energy shifts. People feel something different. You don't have to prove anything. Your presence does the speaking. But without standards, you drift. You say yes when you want to say no. You stay silent just to avoid tension. You tolerate disrespect not because you agree with it, but because it feels easier than dealing with discomfort. And slowly, silently, your self-worth begins to wear down. Not from one big betrayal, but from 1,000 small moments when you traded your voice for temporary peace. That's the hidden cost of low standards: resentment, confusion, disconnection from your deepest values. You begin to accept less than you deserve and call it normal. You forget what you once dreamed of. You forget that your time, your energy, your dignity are sacred. But the moment you decide to raise your standards, everything changes. Silently, powerfully. You stop justifying yourself to people who've already chosen not to understand. You stop giving energy to noise. You stop confusing being tolerated with being respected. And you begin slowly but surely to build a life that reflects deep, unwavering self-respect. Now, let's be honest, this isn't easy. Especially if you were raised in a home where silence felt safer than truth. Or you've worked in places where burnout was praised more than boundaries. Or you've loved people who only accepted the version of you that stayed small. So when you first start saying, "That doesn't work for me," it might feel strange, maybe even wrong. But it's not wrong. It's new. It's necessary. Because you cannot grow in an environment that punishes your boundaries. You cannot rise while surrounded by voices that pull you down, and you cannot live in integrity while abandoning yourself to keep the peace. It might feel uncomfortable at first, maybe even wrong, but it's not wrong. It's just unfamiliar, and it's necessary. Because you cannot grow in an environment that punishes your boundaries. You cannot rise while surrounded by voices that keep pulling you back down. You cannot live in integrity if you keep abandoning yourself just to avoid discomfort. So how do you raise your standards? Not by waiting for the world to understand you, but by changing how you show up within it. It begins with habits, small, consistent ones. Do you keep your word to yourself? Do you treat your body like something sacred, not something to punish or neglect, but to care for? Do you honor your time, your rest, your energy? These aren't minor things. They're the building blocks of your identity. Every time you quietly honor your own standard, even when no one is watching, you reinforce a powerful message. I am someone who can be trusted. And people feel that. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You just need to be consistent. Because integrity speaks louder than noise. The moment you begin treating yourself seriously, others begin to follow. They learn your time matters, your energy matters, your presence is not casual. And if someone crosses the line, you don't collapse. You don't lash out. You calmly, clearly hold the line, not out of anger, but out of principle. And yes, not everyone will welcome this version of you. Some will say you become too much. Others will whisper, you've changed. And you'll simply smile and say, yes, I've remembered who I am. Let them drift not with bitterness, but with clarity. Because when you raise your standards, what no longer aligns will naturally fall away. You'll tolerate less of what once drained you. Disrespect won't even find a way in, not because it disappeared, but because it no longer fits in your world. The people who are meant to stay, those who can meet you in your strength, your clarity, your calm, they'll stay. And the rest, let them fade. So take a moment and ask yourself, softly but seriously, what are my standards? In relationships, in how I spend my time, in how I speak to myself. If the answer is unclear, that's your work. Write them down, revisit them often, live them daily. Because your standards aren't just preferences, they're your compass. And when they're strong, everything around you rises to meet them. Remember, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you tolerate. And when you stop tolerating the bare minimum, when you walk like someone whose self-respect is not up for negotiation, the world takes notice. Not because you asked for it, but because you became it. So if this message helped you realign, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It lets us know this message mattered. And if you want more guidance like this, explore our playlist. Stoic Wisdom, Mastering Emotions and Inner Strength. It's there for your journey. Until next time, stay calm, stay strong, and keep walking the Stoic path.